Today, boys and girls, we are going back to Sunday school. We are talking about our favorite Bible story, David versus the Big G Goliath. This is part 1. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Crusaders for Christ. I'm glad you joined me today. Take time out of your busy schedule. I would appreciate, if you guys enjoy this content, please hit that little thumbs up button, the like button. Please subscribe. Make some comments down below, maybe some things that you would like me to talk about, maybe what you thought about the content or anything like that. Every little bit helps me with the YouTube and the algorithm and all that good stuff, but enough of that. As you saw in the intro, we are talking about one of our favorite little Sunday school stories, which you probably don't hear a lot about anymore, but it's one of the most popular, is David versus Goliath. Everyone knows the story, and a lot of sermons always start off with the conquering your giants in your life, getting rid of those big things, but we're gonna come at it from probably a different approach. But anyways, we all know the story. So the army of Israel was fighting the Philistines at the time. One was on one top of a hill, and the other was on the other side of the hill, and there's a valley running between it with the brook and the stream going through. It's really cool. I saw doing some research for this. I found a couple of videos on YouTube, which you should probably look it up, check it out. There's one where a couple goes to the actual valley, and there was the ruins of one of the towns that the Israelites had kind of stayed by. There were ruins there. And that's where they were camped out at. And they actually went down into the valley. And this guy was a very soft-spoken guy. But he went all the way down to the valley. So on the video, you could barely see this guy. And he could yell and scream. And he wouldn't even really yell that hard. But you could still hear him. The acoustics with the two hills and the valley was unbelievable. And I've been to Israel a couple times, and there's different places like that where it's just unbelievable with the nature and the way things are built with, hills and walls and stuff, how the acoustics are so unbelievable. So if you can imagine a giant screaming and yelling, you could definitely hear it. It was pretty crazy. But anyways, you had the two armies on one hill, one on the other. And neither one wanted to attack, because if one attacked, they'd have to go down the valley, cross a little stream, and then go up the hill. And they would be at a big disadvantage because they'd be fighting uphill while the other army would be shooting downhill. And they would have all, the high ground. Gotta have the high ground. But so what a lot of times they would do, not just in this instance, but in warfare, they would send out their best warrior, and they would, hey, we got our warrior, you send us your best one, and whoever wins. That way, they cut down on the casualties, and they could one person would surrender, they wouldn't have to worry about 100,000, 50,000, whatever, dead guys and losing half their army. So that was actually a practice that they would do occasionally, but this guy Goliath would come out, and he would taunt the Israelites. And not just taunt them, but make fun of God, make fun of Israel and King Saul and the armies, and just call them all sorts of vile things, which, would be basically cussing, four-letter words, and all that stuff in our times. And everybody was just so scared of this guy, and no one would even think of that. He's just one guy. Saul was head and shoulders above all of his men. The Bible even talks about how tall he was and how big he was. So he wasn't a small guy himself, but he was cowering too in his tent. And this Goliath guy would come out, and in my research, different debates on how tall he really was, anywhere from 9 feet all the way up to 11 and a half feet almost, which is crazy. So we're most of the figures that I got were about 9'9". Most of the Bibles actually says that, but we'll just round it up to 10 feet just for sake of the video. But if you can imagine a guy 10 feet tall, and he would be covered in basically chainmail that went down all the way down to his knees, which weighed anywhere from 125 to 175 pounds alone. So he's a big boy, and that's a lot of weight, just almost 200 pounds worth of just that. Each shin guard he had weighed 20 pounds each one. Just the tip of his spear was 15 to 25 pounds. So imagine a spear that big going through you. You probably wouldn't have much left of yourself, you know. You probably would have a pretty bad day if that happened. But he carried a javelin on the back and a sword. And he also had a shield bearer, which went in front of him with a shield. Now, if you think about this guy, so you got Goliath, who's almost 10 feet tall. He wouldn't have a tiny little Captain America shield, little tiny circle. He would have a huge shield. Usually they were the long, rectangular shields. But that was this guy's job, the shield bearer, would be to protect the guy behind him from arrows, from other rocks, from slings. That was actually part of the army. It was slingers that would have slings, and they would actually do what David's going to do here in a little bit. But that was his job. And to carry a shield for Goliath, you weren't a small boy. You were a big boy because you had to carry that big shield, which most people don't think about. So it was basically two guys going out there taunting Israel. Now, Jesse had 8 sons. One of them, of course, was David, and 3 of his oldest sons were in the war because they were old enough to be in the military. And they were there, and one day Jesse was like, hey, I want you to take this cheese and these breads, and I want you to go give them to the brothers. I want you to give them to their commanders, and come back with some news. Let me know what's going on there. So David goes out there. He scoping things out, talking to different soldiers, and they're telling how this guy's come out scaring people and blah, blah, blah. Well, as he's there, Goliath comes out again. And Goliath would do this twice a day for 40 days. So for over a month, this dude would come out taunting these guys and scaring them and challenging them. Just send me one guy, let's do this. And David heard this, and he's like, who is this uncircumcised dude that's out here defying the armies of God and defying God? And David's oldest brother was saw this and got upset and was mad. Hey, what are you even doing here? And it was basically making fun of him. You need to go back taking care of the sheep and everything. And it was filled with anger. And David's like, what's it to you? What I'm doing here? Someone's already taking care of the sheep. What's going on? And David's like, hey, what happens, if somebody takes down this giant? And they're telling him, well, the king's going to give you money. Yeah, the king's going to give you one of his daughters. You can marry his daughter. And just think about it, if you had all the money and you marry the king's daughter, you're going to be hanging out. The king's going to be your father-in-law. So life is pretty much good at that point, unless the Bible doesn't mention, but maybe no one was taking it because maybe Goliath's daughter was kind of ugly. I don't know, just throwing it out there. Maybe that's why no one wanted to take up the offer. Anyways, just thought sorry. But everybody was scared. Nobody was doing anything. And the next video we do is going to kind of pick up from kind of where I leave off with this one. But just this far, there's 3 things that I see that we can learn from this story. And the first thing is don't be idle. Because with all these guys are just standing around for 40 days. Nobody was doing nothing. All the rewards and money were there for these guys to take on this guy. And just one guy, But, yeah, he might have been big, but everyone just sitting around. Maybe they were like, someone else will do it. Someone else will do it. Now, when we're idle and we refuse to do something because we think the next person coming along will do it, the next guy, or they're better qualified, they're better than me, or that's their calling, they should do that. When we have that attitude, we miss out on an opportunity for God's blessings. And as we'll see in the next video, how David saw through God's eyes, but when we refuse to do what God wants us to do and what we should do, which is common sense, what we should do, we miss out on God's blessing. Someone else is going to come in, do that other job, and they're going to get the blessing. Whatever it may be. Maybe just inner peace and joy from God. Maybe it's promotion, maybe something. But that's the first thing we should learn from this is don't be idle. Just don't stand around and do anything. Even in your Christian life, you always should be doing something to moving God's kingdom forward. Number 2 is don't let jealousy, anger, or pride rule you. A lot of times that's what keeps us from acting because, they think they're better than me. They think they can do this job. Let them go do it. I don't care. David's brother, the oldest brother, was probably mad and jealous because at this time, David had already been anointed king of Israel, the future king of Israel. And Samuel came out and went down the whole line. And Jesse brought out the oldest son first, thinking, this is surely be the one that God wants. And so the oldest son went out there, and he probably was bummed out and mad because he wasn't picked. He probably went out there thinking, I'm going to be the next king. I'm a stud. I can do this. And then, no. Then it went to the next brother. Then the next brother. Then the next brother. And then here comes little David. Go get him out of the field. He's just a lowly shepherd boy. He was the one that was anointed. And also at this time, too, before David fought Goliath, he has already been working for the king in the kingdom, playing his harp, playing different musical instruments. So he already had an audience before the king. So, and the brother knew that. So he probably was jealous, thinking his little brother's already hanging out with the king. He shouldn't be here. And he probably let all those 3 things, the anger, pride, jealousy, rise up inside of him. And that's why he snapped at David. Now, if he would have had his heart right with God, he could have gone out and fought Goliath, and God would have been with him. But instead, he chose just to be a coward like everybody else. The third thing that I see is don't let fear control you. There's different times in our lives, whether it's the fear of the unknown, whether it's an actual physical, you're walking down a dark alley, or your car breaks down at night, or, where fear actually comes over us. And we can't let fear control you. If you're going through your life and something's happening in your life and you're scared, you can't let it control you because people are going to see that and it's going to spread. Well, if this person's spread and they're supposed to be a child of God, well, if they're scared, well, I got to be scared too, because if there's no hope for them, there's no hope for me. And that's why as Christians, it's easier said than done. We have to be courageous, and God's going to give us that. Now, Saul had been in the army. He was a king. He was a great warrior, and he was cowering in his tent. Now, in Samuel 16, I believe it's 16:14, it actually says that the Spirit of God had left Saul. And Saul was on God's bad list because basically he disobeyed God. God gave very strict instructions, and he disobeyed him several times. And God took his spirit from him, and he was actually being tormented by evil spirits. And that's why David was there to play music for him. But that's probably why Saul was so scared, because God wasn't there. He didn't have that confidence that God was behind him anymore. So that's probably why he was all scared and cowering. So those are 3 main things. Don't be idle. Don't let jealousy, anger, or pride rule you. And don't let fear control you. Because when you're scared, it's going to make you do stupid things. He was so much of a coward. He didn't even think David could do the job. But yet, he's like, yeah, go ahead. Yeah. All right, you go. So he's sending out a little kid to do his job when he should have been doing it himself. So those are 3 quick things that I thought would help out, that I saw reading this story right off the bat. We're just halfway through. That's why I split this up in 2 videos. But don't be idle. Don't let jealousy, anger, or pride rule you, and don't let fear control you. So the next video, which I'll post up in a couple days, we'll pick up from right where we left off today, and we'll finish this story. But again, I really thank you guys for watching this video. Like I said, I tried to make it as quick as possible, but if you enjoyed it, please hit that thumbs up, subscribe, share this video, and peace out, guys. Crusaders for Christ. Love y'all. Talk to you next video.